Hello and welcome to Direct Initiative, the podcast where we talk about direct democracy and the importance of ballot measures. My name is Alex Kawa, and today we're going to be doing a breakdown of the recent referendums in Switzerland. So last Sunday, June 18th, Switzerland voted on 3 referendums. These referendums included issues relating to corporate taxes and climate change. And as Reuters reports, quote, voters in Switzerland on Sunday approved the introduction of a global minimum tax on businesses and a climate law that aims to cut fossil fuel use and reach zero emissions by 2050, public broadcaster SRF reported. The results showed almost 80% of those who voted in Sunday's national referendum backed raising the country's business tax to the 15% global minimum rate from the current average minimum of 11%, an unusually strong endorsement. This ensures that Switzerland will not lose any tax revenue to foreign countries, Finance Minister Karen Keller-Sutter said. It will on top also create legal certainty and a stable framework. In 2021, Switzerland joined almost 140 countries that signed up to an OECD deal to set a minimum tax rate for big companies, a move aimed at limiting the practice of shifting profits to low-tax countries. Even with the increase, Switzerland will still have one of the lowest corporate tax levels in the world, and the proposal, estimated to bring 2.5 billion Swiss francs, the equivalent of 2.8 billion US dollars per year, in additional revenue, has been backed by business groups, political parties, and the public. So let me repeat that. 80% of Swiss voters voted to back a corporate tax rate increase. That is incredibly high, and as they mentioned in the article, that is incredibly rare for a referendum to get that level of support. Regarding the climate law that was also passed in last week's referendums, it is described as, quote, a draft climate law aimed to cut emissions to net zero by 2050. And it was initially rejected in 2021 for being too expensive, but this time around it passed. Quote, for me, it's the minimum that Switzerland needs to do, says Swiss Green Party MP Delphine Klopfenstein-Borghini. We must move forward today with this climate law, which sets goals that are compatible with what our neighbors are doing. Switzerland is warming at twice the global rate, melting once mighty glaciers and creating new rockfall risks. Yet its policies are deemed insufficient by Climate Action Tracker. Facing pressure to act, Bern has previously said direct democracy limits its options. And that's an important thing to point out. As Borghini states, this really is just the first step and should not be thought of as the end-all be-all. However, this does go to show that direct democracy is that stepping stone that can lead to greater action on an issue, because, again, as Climate Action Tracker said, Switzerland was not sufficiently doing enough to combat climate change, and that has led to dire consequences for the country. In showing that the voters do support taking those first steps towards combating climate change can lead to more action in the future, because it's clear that more people are willing to make their voices heard on this issue. Now, these are obviously not the first national referendums that Switzerland has held. They are a country that does have a very strong form of direct democracy, and in fact, referendums are required in order to amend the national constitution. And when you hear that, you might think, oh, well, this means that their democracy is absolutely screwed and their quality of life is horrendous, when that could not be further from the truth. In 2022, they had the highest human development index of any country, and according to the Economist Intelligence Unit, they are classified as a full democracy, which basically means that their civil liberties and political freedoms are protected to a degree where their democracy thrives, and instead of just being stagnantly good, if that makes sense. But this goes to show that when you give voters a choice, not only will they pick the side that is correct and will do the most good for their country, but it also makes this democracy stronger in the long run. And we mentioned this in previous episodes too, about how Switzerland has not seen any loss in minority rights as long as their direct democracy system has been around for. And clearly they have one of the highest qualities of life in the entire world, which can be attributed to their system of direct democracy, especially when looking at how these referendums will impact the country overall. Raising corporate tax rates. Again, the purpose of this is to limit the practice of shifting profits to low-tax countries. So it's helping to create a somewhat fair tax system, and of course moving in the right direction on climate change. And again, these are incremental issues. And when I advocate for direct democracy, I don't advocate for it as the end-all be-all. I advocate for it as a way in which to move forward on these issues And taking that first step really can lead to bigger steps down the road. Because once the public gets engaged with these issues, it has the potential to lead them to supporting even more action on the issues of importance. And that's why it's important to give them that voice, because when you do give them that voice, they not only make their voices heard in large numbers, but you create a more informed electorate. And that is what has also led to Switzerland having such a full democracy. Because the more these referendums are voted on, the more the voters have to pay attention to the issues of importance. And as a result, they're a more informed electorate. For these reasons, I think the Swiss model of direct democracy is a great thing to look at when considering how direct democracy can work in other countries, because you have a country that has maintained a level of happiness and satisfaction and quality of life and has excelled in terms of its democratic health. This shows that it's possible to create a system where the voters have a say in government, not just by electing their representatives and being engaged with them, but also by voting specifically on the policy agenda they want to see, instead of just guessing what their representatives will do once in office. The results from these referendums, I think, definitely are a sign of hope and are a sign of why direct democracy has so much potential to not only improve, again, the health of democracy in a country, but the quality of life. But I want to hear what you all think about this. Thank you all so much for listening. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, further reading is linked down in the description below. And if you're listening on YouTube, then please leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave a review on this podcast and follow it. And I will see everybody soon. I'm Alex Kawa, and this is Direct Initiative.